Hello and welcome to another evening of frank conversation here on Hard Copy. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. Last week we focused on illegal migration and putting an end to modern slavery with the Director General of NAPTIP, Julie Okadonli. If you missed the interview, do watch it on channelstv.com/hardcopy. But when the migration is legal, happening at an alarming rate, is one of the best brains, or is of some of the best brains the country has to offer in one critical sector of the economy, then there is a need to interrogate further. Only this week, the Nigerian Senate summoned the Minister of Health, Professor Isaac Adewale, to come before it and brief on the state of the health sector, a briefing some might consider a little overdue. But to put our discussion in perspective tonight, let's give you some figures from a survey conducted by NOI Polls in 2017 and I think published in May 2018. They found that 8 out of 10 doctors surveyed were seeking work opportunities abroad, and this finding cuts across junior, mid, and senior level doctors in both public and private medical institutions, such as house officers, corps members, medical and senior medical officers, registrars, consultants, and medical directors. Now, they further found that the reasons for the continuous brain drain in the health sector include challenges such as high taxes, deductions from salaries, low work satisfaction, poor salaries emolument, and the huge knowledge gap that exists in the medical practice abroad, amongst others. The question tonight is, who is doing anything about this? My guests tonight are the President of the Nigerian Medical Association, Dr. Francis Fadile. Welcome to Hard Copy.
Thank you very much.
We also have with us the Chairman, Senate Committee on Health, Senator Larry Tedrosho, who is also a medical doctor. Welcome to Hard Copy.
Thank you, Marva.
Now, only recently, I know that the comment of the Minister of Health, I beg your pardon, of the Minister for Labor and Productivity, Dr. Chris Ngige, went viral when he said that Nigeria has a surplus of medical personnel. The NMA reacted very strongly. Your association came out to say that's not true. You brought out the ratio of doctors to patients in Nigeria, or to the population in Nigeria. But beyond what we have seen, the reactions and maybe memes and cartoons and articles and editorials, the conversation seems not to be going any further than that. What is being done about this?
Certainly, I think it's not very correct that the conversation is not going beyond that. The Nigerian Medical Association just had its annual delegate meeting and general conference in Abakaliki last week. And one of the things that we discussed is about brain drain, how we can convert it to brain gain. And I can tell you for a fact that the Nigerian Medical Association had been in the news severally, letting people know that many of our very best brains are leaving this country. We have enumerated many reasons why they are leaving. We have said the working conditions in our hospitals are not good. We have said, importantly, that the government is not ready to create spaces to employ medical personnel, not only medical doctors. We have said that we have issues about expanding the medical space. For example, what a lot of us look at is what happens at the federal teaching hospitals. Meanwhile, where we want more people on ground to be is at the primary healthcare centers. The state of our primary healthcare centers is in shambles and is really poor. And many state governments, as it is today, are not employing doctors. You see some general hospitals, they have just one doctor, whereas we need to have complement of 9, 10, 11, 15 doctors. And these are areas that they have decided to shut the door against our doctors.
You talked about the primary healthcare centers, which this administration says it is its primary focus. They said they're not going to invest so much in the tertiary healthcare centers, and they're going to be building the super centers, the primary healthcare. I think primary healthcare under one roof is what it is called, in one word or in every ward of the country. And one of the things that they have done, I think only recently, the Senate approved the 1% from the Consolidated Revenue Fund, which you were optimistic about. I think you were quoted as saying that the funds will be distributed to the centers across the country directly. And that you said you hope to introduce a toll-free line that you can call us, let us know what is happening in your primary center. so that when you give them money, you don't want a situation whereby money will not be applied appropriately. Those were your words. However, he still says that the primary healthcare centers are in shambles. You have oversight powers. What is happening in that area?
Well, first of all, you only oversight what has been implemented. We introduced the 1% of the Consolidated Revenue Fund into the budget in 2018. In all countries that we are talking about health success today, it's all about health financing. In 2001, all African countries came to Abuja, and they decided that for you to have any successful health sector, you must put in at least 15% of your budget into the health sector. It was called the Abuja Declaration at that time, 2001. But unfortunately, we have never put more than 5% in our budget. So in all countries that have succeeded in the health space, countries as not as rich as Nigeria, for example, Botswana, they have successful health indices. And what is common to all of them is that they are near that 15%. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Let us first of all take care of our health financing. Let us put the money there. So we, in our own wisdom, we decided that let us increase the health budget. In 2018, last year, we introduced the 1% after about 4 years that the law was introduced. And that was about 55 billion naira, which is about $180 million. 2018, the state governments, they were not ready for this money. Because for you to have access to that money, the state government must have their own agencies, the health insurance agencies, the primary health care agencies, so that they could partner with the Ministry of Health at the federal level to enjoy this money. Unfortunately, the money was introduced, they were not ready. So as far as we are concerned, as of today, we couldn't do any oversight because the money has not yet been implemented. So this really is a basic game changer for the health sector. We need to introduce good funding into all the primary health centers in Nigeria. We have about 30,000 health centers in this country. Only about 4,000 of them are functional. So you can imagine we just have structures. Most of them are even now like poultry sheds in the country because we just have so many introduction of primary health centers for political reasons, and they don't coordinate with the primary health center, with the Ministry of Health to confirm if they can even equip or even put their staff to manage it. So,
but the Ministry of Health, I've spoken with the Minister of Health before, and he says that even for him as a ministry, that is where his focus is. I mean, they're having criticisms that, oh, the federal government is taking on the role of local governments. How can the federal government say that they are funding primary health care centers, for instance? But he says that has been the thrust of his own tenure as Minister of Health. Even that, which you still have oversight powers on, what would you say has been achieved so far with the little that has been budgeted before this 1% was finally budgeted in the 2018 budget?
First of all, we need to understand that the Constitution says that the primary health center is the responsibility of the state government. It's not the responsibility of the federal government. So the introduction of the support from the federal government is a support. So now that it is not functioning, the federal government, in its wisdom, decided to help the state government by providing additional funding. But of course, it's a kind of counterpart funding for them. They need to do their part, and the federal government is now introducing their own funding to make it work. The federal government cannot run the primary health centers all over the country. The state government, they are nearer the centers. They are in their wards, their local government. They have access to the nurses to put there. So the funding now has been put in place. So the state governments must now wake up to their responsibilities. They must be ready to receive the money, and for accountability, the guidelines put in place by the Federal Ministry of Health, which is very robust and it will take care of all this oversight, must be implemented. So the state governments must support this funding.
In the meantime, you have talked about the problems, I mean, the reasons why doctors are emigrating, working conditions, emoluments, and things of the sort. However, even with the ones that are staying in Nigeria, your association admits that about 70% of them are staying in the place where only 30% of the population reside. The remaining 70% which stay in the rural areas are not getting access to doctors. Some governors have complained out of frustration that no matter what they do, these doctors will only go there temporarily and then they relocate back to the urban areas. What must be done to make sure that doctors stay in rural areas where they're needed?
Thank you very much. I think it's not, except on one or two states, most governors are not very responsive to the health system in their different states. For example, we have some states that are owing their doctors for upward of 13 months, 10 months, and other health workers. We have some states that the total number of medical personnel in their whole employment is about 20 or 30. The governors of our different states are just not interested in health. And if we are talking about 3%, 5% of budget to health in the federal level, go to the states. It is very, very poor. And what we have seen over the years is that government or governors or the politicians are interested in big edifices, opening up places. They are not interested in putting personnel. They are not interested in putting all the equipment that they have in place. And the truth about it is that even if you get doctors to work at their primary healthcare centers, what incentives do you put in those rural areas for the doctor to be able to take care of his wife, his children, and other things? Are we not, when we talk about security, the security issues in this country has made doctors to be one of the targets of kidnappers. How well are we securing those areas? And these are things that we want to look at. Now you say a doctor should go and work in a rural area. You don't have pipe-borne water. You don't have electricity. You don't have good school. So he will have to take his children and leave the children in the urban area, going to the rural area and moving. These are things that will not make the primary healthcare work function at its optimum. What we are saying is that the government, when they are putting doctors or other health workers in these primary healthcare centers and secondary healthcare centers, they should provide incentives that will make them to stay. For example, about 5, 10, 15 years ago, there is this rural allowance that were given to any health workers who works in the rural area. These are further incentives. Again, there are some things that you want to build house, you want to get some small loans that can make you stay and live comfortably in those areas. Those things are not in place. They just drop you there. And I can tell you, one of the major problems that we have with government employment, state government employment, is their pay is about half of what the federal government pays the medical personnel. So it means if you have an employment in the state, you are always looking at the federal to get a placement. We have asked for universal applicability of commerce so that every doctor, wherever you are practicing, you can get the same emolument, the same salary, and you can be comfortable.
So is it possible then that the Minister of Labor had a point when he said that we have surplus? Maybe he was looking at it from the federal level. You shake your head. Is not correct?
Yeah, the situation is very simple. The statistics that is being referred to there is that we have overpopulation of medical doctors in the urban areas. If you go to Lagos, Port Harcourt, Abuja, you will say we have many doctors. But that is not Nigeria. The international community, when they come and do their survey in Nigeria, they don't stay in all those cities. They go to Sokoto local government and find out how many doctors we have per citizens.
Interestingly, this survey was also, there was also a focus on the Federal Capital Territory. There were some in-depth interviews done with some of the doctors surveyed here in the Federal Capital Territory, and even they are heavily dissatisfied with what is going on. Majority of the doctors that are being recruited are recruited in hotels here in the Federal Capital Territory and even in the Lagos, which you mentioned.
Unfortunately, we also have rural areas in Abuja. So there are some wards in Abuja that are rural. So maybe they are talking about such areas. But the real issue here is this. What we have introduced, this 1%, is a game changer. Now the money is going directly to the primary health centers. It's not going to go to the Ministry of Health. So now any serious doctor can go and manage a primary health center because it's the leader, the health leader in that center that will control the funding. And this money is assured every month. You will get money to pay for your electricity. You get money to do your borehole for your water. So you have no excuse not to make your profit.
Let's take a break now. When we come back, we'll talk about, we'll definitely be asking Dr. Faduile if he believes it's actually a game changer. And the issue of strikes, have they really solved anything? Because this is one of the instruments that the enemy has used to push for its demand in the medical sector. In a moment, please stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Hard Copy, coming to you from our studios in Abuja. My guests tonight are the President of the Nigerian Medical Association, Dr. Francis Faduyile, and the Chairman, Senate Committee on Health, Senator Larry Tedrosho. And we're talking about the migration of, what's led to the emigration of medical personnel from the country. Interestingly, this emigration not only covers doctors, even though our focus tonight is on doctors. You know, other medical personnel are also concerned. First and foremost, I want you to react to what Senator Tedrosho said about the game changer. Do you believe that this CRF fund is actually a game changer in the medical sector?
Well, sincerely, I think it's going to have an impact, but I do not believe that it's going to totally have a change the outlook of things. One, you need to employ doctors, and this money I don't think is for employment of doctors. How well are the state governments or state governors ready to employ doctors and get proper staffing in all the primary health care centers? Secondly, you need to have equipment. This fund will be able to help equipment. Thirdly, we need to also have people to have better orientation towards health and to be able to assess health. And that is where health insurance scheme comes into play. And it is important also for us to know that to complement this 1% consolidated revenue fund that has been given into this primary health care center, that we need also that the people who are indigent, and these are the people that you see at the rural area majorly, that they can afford the proper health management or health treatment. And that is where we need to also emphasize on the national health insurance scheme. Today, the percentage of enrollee is less than 5%. That is the national health insurance scheme. That is minus
the problems that are currently bedeviling the national health insurance scheme.
And what they have asked is that each state should have their own agency. And I can tell you what we have found out in those states that have started, except some few states that are really interested. Most of the states are doing it for political reasoning and to be able to access that fund. And we can tell you one of our resolutions at our meeting, the ADM that just ended last week, was that states that have gone ahead to set up their agency and they do not have input from the stakeholders, that we should desist from working with them. So we still have a lot of issues that we still need to settle before we can actually say, yes, Eureka, we have got into that position.
You want to quickly respond to that?
Well, I just want to address the problem of Nigerians. It is so basic. What we are complaining about here is the disease that is killing Nigerians the most, for example, is malaria. We don't even need a doctor to solve that problem. We need to have good health workers in the primary health centers. Let us make the primary health centers.
By good health workers, you mean who?
I mean, maybe the nurses, for example, and good community health workers that can advise them on how to even make sure mosquitoes don't come around their homes, to advise them on nutrition. We have 2.5 million Nigerians today that are acutely malnourished. These are things that we don't even need a doctor for you to solve their problems. So let us first of all go to the basics. The money that we're talking about will make sure we have functional primary health centers, that any Nigerian in the rural area can go into that center and ask advice on malaria.
Are they going to be
treatment free? Yes, of course, it's going to be paid for by Nigerian government. Once this 1%, that money is not, they're not going to pay it back. It's going to make sure that they have available drugs to give the patients that come in. They're going to have money to pay the nurses working there. If a doctor chooses to go to the rural area and work there, it will be paid from that money. The issue of doctors going on strike is only in the tertiary institution that we get alarmed. Once we get these primary centers working, they have their money. Even when they go on strike at the tertiary institutions, we won't feel it in Nigeria anymore because the money is there.
Are you concerned, though, about, is this a major issue that you are concerned about, this emigration of our medical personnel? Because as I said, it's not just doctors. Only recently, I think it was a national hospital where we were told that about 45 nurses, I think, left in one fell swoop. That's something to worry about.
I'm a medical doctor myself.
Yes.
I go for their meetings in London, in America, and they tell me their problems. They want to come back to Nigeria, but they believe that they cannot make the kind of money they're making abroad. But I'm telling them that, okay, we are going to make the health sector commercially viable, because they can go to banks in America, take money to buy equipment for their hospitals. In Nigeria today, Our banks don't see health sector as commercially viable, so they don't give them money.
Those are doctors that are well established. What about those who are leaving schools?
Yes, the ones leaving school now, for example. If a doctor leaving school today decides to go to a primary health center in Okiono, local government, for example, local government in Okiono, in Abeokuta, and he says he wants to manage 2 primary health centers, he's going to get every month a minimum of 1 million naira coming from this fund. Every month guaranteed. If you have that kind of money, the banks will chase you and make sure that, yes, this money, we can give you even more money because they know that this money is guaranteed. That's what we have done. So now the health sector is now commercially viable, and we don't need to rely on government all the time for the success or progress in the health sector, because we have made the environment better for the private sector medical practitioner.
Strikes is one instrument that your association has employed in the past to try and press home its demands. Maybe not the NMA, maybe NERD, resident doctors, trying to remember all the associations now, but we know that doctors go on strike in Nigeria. Has it really worked as an instrument to try and bring home some of these issues? And what other instruments are you pursuing?
Thank you very much. Yes, it is true that we have strikes, but I can tell you that it is the last resort that gets doctors to go on strike. And again, sometimes we are pushed to the wall, there is nothing you can do. So I can say that some of the times we have had some of those good things, those issues that we want to resolve, being resolved through strike. But most of the time, we do not get to the level of strike. There are conflicts that we discuss. We have now decided to do more of advocacy, more of discussion. And we're having some, partly the government is becoming more responsive. So we don't really need to get to that extent.
It's good news. It's good news when you say government is becoming responsive.
More
responsive. Yes. That is definitely good to hear. Senator, your colleagues have summoned the Minister of Health. What is the problem? They talked about, lack of facilities and things of the sort in the tertiary institutions. What do you have to say, since you directly oversight some of those institutions?
You need to understand the workings of the Senate, or even the National Assembly generally. A senator that is in my committee will have more information about what is happening in the health sector, more than a senator that is not in that committee. Unfortunately, I was in the UK with the minister who invited the Chatham House to discuss the health sector of Nigeria on that day. Otherwise, my colleague would have asked me before going to the floor to talk about the problems of Nigeria. We know the problems, and we've been working at it for over 1 year. Of course, health financing is what we have to concentrate on, which we have already introduced. Okay, but unfortunately, the money has not yet been released. So I need to now tell my colleague about what we have done so far. He's not in my committee, so he won't know what we've done for the health sector. So really, it's a matter of just information. But as far as we are concerned, we know that there's a problem, but we can't be solved in a day. But we are ready for it.
Your colleagues definitely hear from me. I'm sure that lots of Nigerians are also waiting to feel what exactly has come out from all of the talk on financing and perhaps even the actions taken by the Senate. But we're totally out of time, gentlemen. I have to thank you both for coming on Hard Copy tonight. I've been speaking with the President of the Nigerian Medical Association, Dr. Francis Faduyile, and the Chairman, Senate Committee on Health, Senator Lanre Tedrosho. We'll be talking about the migration or the emigration of Nigerian doctors out of the country. Gentlemen, thank you again for coming on Hard Copy.
Thank you very much.
That's the program tonight. Well, please do send us a comment or two using the handles showing on your screen. If you miss any edition, channelstv.com/hardcopy is the place to catch up. Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. Good night.